The second signs and wonder God did in the life of our founder, prophet, pastor, Reverend SBJ Oshoffa was in Agange. You heard me right. The second signs and wonder God did in the life of our founder, SBJ Oshoffa, was in Agange. God used him to raise a young Methodist man named Kudio in Agange. God used him to raise a young man of Methodist church called Kudio in Agange. Now, let me explain to you. When Papa Oshoffa, when he came out the forest and entered into Agange, the first signs and wonder he did was the man named Kudio. God used him to raise. God used Papa Oshoffa to raise a dead. Now, let me read it to you. According to Constitution, page 6, section 21. Now, let me read. It said, now knowing how to paddle. He doesn't know how to paddle. When he began to wandering around, he saw, like I said earlier, he saw a canoe. He saw a canoe along the Int'l narrow stream from Agange well into the forest. Now, our father didn't know how to paddle. That person has left him. The person he hired has left him. So he got into the canoe and just allowed. He said, I allowed myself to be carried downstream by the current of the stream, which was then in full flood. Wọ́n ní ìkún omi dé. Wọ́n ní àwọn jókòó síbi àwọn ọmọ bó ṣe ń wa kínní. Àwọn jẹ́ kí ìkún omi yẹn kó máa gbé àwọn lọ. Kó máa gbé àwọn lọ. He said, to then the full flood. He said, why the canoe was thus carried from side to side by the current. By nígbà tí ìkún omi yẹn dé, bí canoe yẹn ṣe, bí ìkún omi yẹn ṣe ń gbé wọn lọ́sọ̀ọ̀sọ̀ side by side. He said, snake would come down from the tree. He said, snakes fell from trees into the canoe, but I carried them from the canoe with my hand back into the stream unhurt. Said, I continued my trip down to the river and soon got to Agange. Now, let me explain to you. When he allowed the flood, he didn't know how to paddle, he entered the canoe, and the flood began to pass him side by side. He said, snake will fall from the forest, from the tree to the canoe. He will carry the snake, put them back in the river unhurt, put them back unhurt. Said, I will put them back in the stream unhurt. Nítorí pé transformation has taken place. Divine encounter has taken place. Jesus Christ has taken control of him. That is why all those animals did not hurt him. Because he began to play with animals. And you imagine, only a true man of God can do that. Now, let me continue. He said, I continued my trip down to the river and soon got to Agange. God is great. There, I found a Methodist young man called Kudio at the point of death, who was reported to have been very ill for a long time. I touched him and Jesus raised him up. He is alive today, and so are his children, all in Agange. Can you imagine? He said, Jesus raised him. That's why I said God did in the life of our founder. Papa Oshoffa. God used him to raise a Methodist man named Kudio. On the first day of his arrival, Jesus raised him. Jesus raised him. And he's still alive. I don't know, maybe he's dead now, but his children, everything, all of them are still alive in Agange. Can you see the power of God? Can you see the power of God? He said it was point of death, and he touched him, and Jesus raised him up. He never said he raised him up. He said Jesus raised him up. He's alive, and he's all in Agange and his children. Now, I now went, that's section 22. I now went to collect more ebony wood from the forest. On my return, after 5 days from the forest, the whole of Agange was in ferment. What kind of a man is this? They said, we will certainly follow him in his church. I told them I did not have a church. They would not listen, and I prayed for them. I stayed with Yesufu in Agange, who was a neighbor of mine back in Porto Novo. After the miracle of raising Kudio on the first day of my arrival in Agange, and before my return from the forest, Yesufu had gone back to Porto Novo to tell my relations that he had seen me at Agange, that I looked very old and like a madman, and my hair was long, unkempt, and matted, that even my dress was rough and untidy, and that I touched a dead, and they rose up. He did not know what was the matter with me. My relations replied him that the reason for my untidy appearance could not be anything but laziness. Can you imagine? He said, I began to prepare to return home to Porto Novo on the 5th day. I engaged Zizo as my new paddler. On my return there, all those who had known me before were curious. I began to have crowd and visitors. That is where I am going to stop. On the first day of arrival in Agange, God used Papa Oshoffa. Jesus raised a dead in the life of Oshoffa. God used him to raise a dead, a young man named Kudio, a Methodist young man. God used Papa Oshoffa to raise him up in Agange. And he said, and again, after he has returned, he still go back to go and buy ebony. That's what I just read for you now. He said, I went back on my return after 5 days. He said, I now went again for more ebony wood from the forest. Begin to walk. He began to walk. He said, on his return after 5 days from the forest, the whole Agange was ferment. He said, what kind of man is this? He raised dead. He do this. He did that. He said, he prayed for them, and he stayed with Yesufu in Agange. That Yesufu was a neighbor of Papa Oshoffa back in Porto Novo. He said after the miracle, raising Kedio the first day of his arrival in Agange, he said before he returned to the forest, that is, he stayed with Yesufu, and after the first size and rounder, he returned to forest to go and buy ebony. He said after his returned, Yesufu has already went, before his return, yes, he has already went to Porto Novo to go and explain to his family that he saw him, he looked like a mad man, he looked like old, he do this, he raised he do this, he do that. And his family said, Abashifa family said, hey, it's laziness, Jare. It's laziness. This is what I just want to bring on. Before I bring it, he said he began to prepare to return home to Porto Novo on the 5th day. That on the 5th day. Let me explain again. On that first day, God used him to raise dead, and he went back. He stayed with Yesufu, and he went back to go and buy ebony again, to go and purchase ebony himself. To go and get ebony again. He went back to collect more ebony wood. He said on getting, before he returned, he said, on my return, yes, after 5 days from the forest, the whole Agange, he said before he returned, his friend has already gone, Yusufu. He said he was already born. He said, I stayed with Yusufu in Agange, who was a neighbor of mine in Port Novo. He said, before my return from the forest, Yusufu had gone back to Port Novo. That's what I said. I want to read it to be sure. He had already gone back to Port Novo to tell his family before his arrival. That 5 days. He said after on the fifth day, he hired someone again. He hired a new paddler, Zinzo, so who would take him home. And when he got home, he began to have a lot of visitors and crowd. That's what I want to tell you. When God called you, when you are called by God, people closer to you, a lot of people will not believe. Even your family will say, they said it to Jesus now. Joseph Carpenter, Nazareth, they will not believe in you until God Himself elevates you. Don't be discouraged. Just keep on pushing. Just keep on pushing. God bless you. I'm coming back.